Hello everyone, I'm Park and we continue to open up our imaginations. In this lecture I'd like to discuss the general issues related to management and teaching at universities. Universities tend to have a more relaxed approach to student management. And this is understandable. After all, students who enter universities are adults and they should possess a sense of responsibility and self-control. Therefore, in universities there is generally less interference in this regard, and I think this is a reasonable approach for students transitioning from high school to university. The most significant challenge is whether they can adapt to the self-study demands of university education. This means their ability for self-directed learning. Unfortunately, both university management and teaching tend to overlook this issue. The transition from high school to university often lacks guidance and instruction on fostering a spirit of self-study and effective learning. In my opinion, universities should incorporate a structured program to guide students' learning. Unfortunately, this aspect is largely overlooked and there is often a lack of specific courses or comprehensive support for students to develop effective study skills. So incoming freshmen at the university typically manage reasonably well in their first year because the curriculum is often a continuation of what they studied in high school, which includes a lot of overlapping knowledge. However, as they progress to their second or third year, numerous issues start emerging. One of the most significant problems is that they lack a thinking mode or strategy when it comes to learning. They often rely on the same learning methods they used in high school, and this approach can make their university studies significantly more challenging. As I mentioned earlier, university education goes beyond merely completing assignments. It involves exploring various reference materials and sources of knowledge. This requires students to develop the ability to study, effectively understand what to focus on, and know which reference materials to use. Sometimes it's not just about reading but about understanding how to connect various sources with their field of study. Many students don't grasp this and they end up resorting to rote memorization, which can lead to immense academic pressure and stress. First and foremost, I want to make it clear that I'm not questioning the overall standard or quality of education at universities. My intention is solely to address a particular issue. In many universities, some students experience significant academic stress due to a lack of a thinking mode or strategy for learning. This is a common problem and it's particularly prevalent in students studying technical or scientific subjects. Now, whether or not educators and professors agree with this perspective is not the primary concern here. The fact remains that many students, especially when they transition from foundational courses to specialized ones, face a disconnect in science and engineering disciplines. It's a widespread issue. Of course, there are exceptions. Some students are exceptionally bright, have well-established thinking modes, and can bridge the gap between different courses seamlessly, but these students are not the majority. So during their university years, the management within universities, especially in terms of educational management, is quite similar across the board. Universities worldwide follow similar patterns and the onus is primarily on the students themselves. They need to be self-disciplined and self-motivated with a strong capacity for self-study. The issue here is that the fundamental purpose of university education is to nurture talent, but what I find perplexing is whether universities worldwide have considered how they intend to achieve this goal of talent cultivation. It's not about having a few excellent professors who can guide experiments and theories and then you can nurture talent. I consider this approach to be far from realistic. Even in the case of graduate students conducting research projects, they need a strong and well-structured thought process. Without it, how can they effectively pursue their research topics? How can they bring their projects to fruition? While I may be exaggerating a bit, having a robust thought process makes research much simpler. With this thought process, you can break down your research topics, connect them using various pieces of knowledge, and deduce your final objectives or key elements. That's all there is to it. So I'm a Bit puzzled because universities aim to nurture talent, but if these talents lack a solid thought process, how can they produce meaningful results? Let's look at the facts. There are many universities around the world. Without discussing how each country has at least a few prestigious universities, the question remains how many of the graduate students or doctoral candidates produced by these universities and professors ultimately achieve significant success. The answer is very few. You can investigate this for yourself. Many doctor of philosophy and postdocs graduate with little to show for it in their respective industries. They essentially have prestigious academic credentials but haven't contributed significantly through their research or inventions. Of course, some outstanding students or doctoral candidates have research achievements, but honestly, are those research outcomes truly remarkable? I encourage you to examine and research this matter yourself. It's not to say there are none, but they are rare, very rare. Why does this situation exist? Consider how many universities there are in the world, how many distinguished professors they have, and how many graduate students and doctoral candidates they enroll. But in the end, how many people truly stand out each year? Why does this phenomenon occur, particularly in the field of research? I must emphasize that without a sound thinking mode there will be no progress. Instead, it leads to a very blind and trial and error approach, which can cause individuals to take many wrong paths. Whether you are a university professor or a graduate student, after listening to my lecture, take a moment to reflect on whether what I'm saying is true. So I have an idea. It's my idea. I believe that in universities there should be a dedicated course on the theory of thinking modes. With such a course, it would make learning much easier for all university students, particularly those involved in research, if they can effectively use the theory of thinking modes. Their research process, research objectives, and the problems they need to solve will become crystal clear. Imagine if this level of clarity is achieved, how many results would graduate students, doctoral candidates, and postdocs produce each year worldwide? How many achievements would they create that change our society, technology, and life? All these results, once discovered and created, would make the world a better place. Of course, this is just my hope. Now, turning back to the point, since we can't demand that all universities in the world change their teaching methods, it relies on the students themselves. If you are fortunate enough to listen to my lecture today, then think carefully. Is your thinking mode the problem? If you can truly change your thinking mode, if you genuinely have a good, comprehensive, structured and perfect thinking mode, your learning will become much easier at the very least, and the pressure will not be as intense as it is now. So in terms of university management or teaching, I can only offer these immature personal suggestions. But I do hope you take them seriously, because after all, the goal of a university is to nurture talent. I believe that if you train more and more graduate students and doctoral candidates, and if you produce more and more research outcomes, the reputation of your university will grow, and this is a very realistic outcome. So I believe that university management can be divided into two main aspects: student life management and educational management. Regarding student life management, as I mentioned earlier, it is understandable because university students are after all adults and should rely on their self-discipline. Ultimately, you are responsible for your actions, and it's not fair to blame others or expect universities to do everything for the students. I think this is an objective reality, and how much you understand and comply with it depends on your discretion in the end. Regardless of the circumstances, it is your responsibility. The most important aspect we need to discuss is the management of education. Today I want to talk about the second aspect of educational management, especially in some technical and science universities. During their studies, students may be involved in various practical activities, including internships. This is a common occurrence in technical and science universities. However, in my personal opinion, whether these experiments or practical activities are effective for students is difficult to determine. Why do I say this? It's because these experiments and practical activities are often too narrowly focused. For example, in a chemistry class a specific experiment is conducted, but the additional conditions it can create and the changes it can bring about are often not explored or discussed. In the case of engineering, when students go to a workshop for an internship to manufacture something, they often remain limited to that particular task without broader exploration. Why is that? It's because these are essentially technical, means specific requirements where you only know that you need this technique for this task or that technique for another task, and that's it. But where is the expansiveness in this? This is a matter of thinking patterns. If individuals during these practical activities and experiments can expand their thinking and extend their perspectives, the knowledge they acquire could be quite different. So this aspect should also change, especially in technical and science universities. I believe they should alter some of the requirements for these experiments or practical activities to go beyond mere comprehension. If you only understand or know about something and stop there, it becomes meaningless. So you must have expansiveness. I'm not sure if this perspective can gain the approval of everyone, but it's just my viewpoint. I genuinely believe that these experiments and practical activities must have expansiveness, otherwise they are a waste of time. Therefore, overall as a university, its educational management system should indeed undergo some changes. The fundamental change should revolve around nurturing students' thinking patterns, particularly fostering a comprehensive, refined, and perfect thinking pattern. Without this, the talents produced may be challenging for people to understand. Of course, I don't deny that it's possible to cultivate some highly intelligent and talented individuals, but they are relatively few. This is because the majority of students may just be coasting through their education. I don't question the competence of professors or the educational standards of universities. These are objective factors that are not up for debate. However, the quality of teaching and the depth of one's knowledge are two different things. I'm not sure if the professors and teachers here would agree with this viewpoint. Many professors or scholars have high levels of expertise, but teaching students effectively can be quite challenging for them. His seems to be a common phenomenon in universities. It's because their teaching often lacks a focus on the perspective of thinking and the development of thinking patterns. If you approach teaching from the perspective of thinking patterns, the knowledge you impart and the way students understand and absorb it can be significantly different. This is what we refer to as the issue of educational quality. This phenomenon extends beyond universities and is present in high schools, middle schools, and even primary schools. Many educators who excelled academically and performed well in teacher training programs may struggle to bring their students up to their level. Why does this happen? It's precisely because of a misalignment in thinking patterns, isn't it? Can anyone deny this? It's an objective fact of reality. So I hope that both the teachers and students who are attending this lecture take some time to contemplate. The ultimate goal of my lecture is to encourage everyone to expand their thinking patterns. I aim to introduce a new, effective, complete, refined and perfect thinking pattern. This way, whether you are studying, living your life or even working, you will be able to solve all the problems you encounter with ease and confidence. This is an undeniable reality. Alright, I will conclude this lecture here for now.
Friends who are interested in my lectures, please click to subscribe and click on the little bell. At the same time, the links to the Big Tree Thinking Model Theory ebook and the Big Tree Thinking Model and Junior High School Mathematics lectures are here below. Friends can click on the link to watch related free lectures. Thank you all.